On this week's episode of the Business and Marketing Scoop, I sit down for a chat with DC Cahalane. DC, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. So, I suppose I know you from, and probably a lot of Cork would know you from, founding Republic of Work. And being the CEO there for a while.
Yeah.
You obviously have a big background in marketing.
Yeah.
Which we'll dig into a bit in a while. And currently you're at Shore Valley Ventures.
Yes.
Which met you at the chamber there recently. That was
Yeah.
something I want to have a chat to you about as well. But I suppose to kind of kick off, maybe just go back through your career a little, through your marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I'm funny. I'm one of those weird marketeers because I've absolutely no formal training in marketing whatsoever. I grew up in West Cork, like everybody in West Cork. You came to Cork to go to college, did computer science and economics in UCC. While I was there, did everything possible to avoid going to lectures. So got massively involved in clubs and societies and Rag Week and all that sort of stuff. Because you see, you did that because I was in college in, God forbid, 1995 to 1999. The internet came in two colors, black and green, and it was on one computer in the basement of the Boo Library.
Jeez.
So, it's mad to think it was then, 1995. Yeah. As I said, I'm from an era where Tinder didn't exist. And, if there was a girl in your class you liked, there was no mobile phones. You had to ring her house, and there was a good chance her dad was going to answer the phone. That's how I explain technology through the ages. So actually, when I left college, all I knew was I wasn't going to work in computers and I wasn't going to work in economics. And I actually spent the first 5 or 6 years of my career in event management in Dublin, working for a big corporate event company called Unique. And actually, that's kind of the start of my marketing career because weirdly, my part of the business was basically doing event production for all the PR and marketing agencies in Dublin. So when they wanted to do the weird ass photo shoot out in the middle of Grafton Street where two models, would play on a bed with a bunch of champagne, because that's what we did in the 90s. I was the one who had to pull the bed out onto Grafton Street and stuff. And what happened was, I guess, you started and it was kind of almost like a builder. You were the guy just doing the legwork. But then more and more, the agencies would ask for your input into coming up with ideas and stuff. So over a couple of years, I got a pretty good rep for essentially launching new products. So I would have been involved in things like the launch of Four Seasons Hotels in Dublin, Westin Hotel in Dublin. Did an awful lot of work actually, ESET Digiphone, and then we did all of their work. And then when they rebranded to O2, we did all of their work. And actually probably the most fun one was I was very involved in the launch of Xbox, which at the time was completely laughable. I literally remember being in the room with all the other agencies and we laughed when some guy from Microsoft tried to convince us that they were going to compete against Sony PlayStation. We were like, the nerds who made Excel think that they can build a gaming console. So just use it, you can be proven wrong. So I think that was that's the evolution of my marketing career I guess, it was literally learning how to build a house, working on it, learning how to design a house on a building site. And I think what that's resulted in over the last 20 odd years of my career is that my style of marketing is almost indistinguishable really from selling. I've always found that, I believe the purpose of marketing is to, create, qualified sales opportunities. And that's a very technical way of looking at it. But everything else, whether it's brand or whatever the tactics you're going to use, the outcome is usually no matter what you're trying to achieve, the outcome really is
revenue.
That's basically it. So when I look back at the kind of specific marketing roles I've had, CMO in Trustive, VP of Growth and Marketing and Teamwork, Group CMO in Dogpatch recently, it's always been I've always kind of had one foot in the marketing side of things and the other foot in, I guess almost like the commercial director type role. So I've always really led marketing and finance and sales at the same time.
Very good. Very interesting. It's very, very varied background. So lots of different projects, lots of different work. But
part of that is, when you I was diagnosed last year with ADHD. it all makes sense now. Like, people who get like diagnosed with adult ADHD, the first thing they go is,
like
that makes sense. Like my LinkedIn profile of like never having a job longer than kind of 3 or 4 years now makes complete and utter medical sense. Like,
fantastic.
Yeah.
So from there, then, if we move to maybe Republic of Work,
Yeah.
where did the initial idea for that come from?
So so I guess my entrance into the kind of technology world and the startup world in particular was many years beforehand. I had been on a plane going over to London for a job interview, actually with Twitter, and met a famous Cork man, Pat Phelan, on the plane. And Pat at the time was the CEO of Cubic Telecom, and Pat had come up with this great idea that he wanted to advance, and had decided like he was going to leave Cubic Telecom and do this new startup called Trustive. And he started kind of, we were just chatting to nonsense on most, as most Cork people do on Aer Lingus planes these days.
And had you ever met before this?
We'd never met. I obviously knew of Pat from his reputation in the technology industry, but never met or anything like that. But he started asking, you know, he was talking about branding and stuff like that. And I remember saying to him, look, I'd love to have a look at the branding and stuff. Happy to help out. And over the next couple of weeks then I was doing this weird thing where I was interviewing with Twitter for like head of business development in Europe, and also talking to Pat. And it literally came to this mad day where I had an interview in the Four Seasons Hotel in Dublin for this like 6-figure job. And then 15 minutes later, I was next door in the RDS for the Dublin Web Summit at the time. And I was meant to be meeting Pat. And obviously I had decided I'm taking the 6-figure job. I'm going to have this fancy job for this American company, and this Cork fella can go away. Because he was offering me, I think, about 50 quid a week at the time. I think was the but I actually came in and I literally was standing back watching the elite of technology in Europe lining up to have a chat with Pat. Like, I mean, guys now like Michael Acton Smith, who had set up Mind Candy, Moshi Monsters. He's now a multi-billionaire. He's the founder of Calm, that meditation app and stuff. Oh, yeah. And I was like, if nothing else, I got to work with this guy for a couple of years. So I went to work for Pat in Trustive, and that started this kind of 5-year period where I did Trustive first, and then I did kind of teamwork after that. And like both of them kind of technology startups. Both of them involved a lot of traveling, Dublin, London, going to the States and stuff like that. And I guess I kind of fell in love with technology startups. We did a lot of meetups and all this sort of stuff. And I guess what I was seeing was like in other cities, I was seeing so much activity. You know, I was going to Dublin, Teamwork had an office in Dogpatch, and I was seeing like how much having a kind of a physical location that startups could kind of plug into had a huge effect on their success. Just founders meeting founders. So at one point during my time in Teamwork, I started running a series of events here in Cork called Built in Cork. Nothing fancy. We used to rent a room in the Kingsley once a month, go out, have a bit of crack, have some speakers. But like after about a year, like there was 150, 200 people showing up to these things. Like. Oh, yeah. And at the time, as I said, I was in Teamwork. And I just, to be honest with you, I don't know if it was the smartest idea I ever had, but I just kind of went, do you know what? Like if there's so much untapped potential in Cork, somebody needs to do something. And I was very good friends with Paddy Walsh in Dogpatch in Dublin, which is essentially the Republic of Work on steroids in Dublin. Knew a lot about how the business ran up there and the model and all that stuff. So I said, like, screw it. So like in January 2016, met Peter and Dan, told them what I was going to do, massively supportive of it. And I left thinking, sure, all I have to do is find a building now and we'll be up and running in May. I think I got the keys of 12 South Mall on the 22nd of December that year. Like, you know, going from a world of technology and, you know, tech to like real world, you need a premises and there's rates and all that. Huge thing. So we actually ended up
moving tech to the slow world arena.
So we actually ended up opening on the 1st of February 2017, which actually was 2 days after my 40th birthday, which was kind of interesting.
Unreal.
So that weekend we threw a big party and nearly trashed the gaff 2 days before we opened. So like the idea, I mean, honestly, the idea was to give kind of businesses in Cork, kind of a central point. There was a kind of course, there was a little bit of irreverence about the fact that we opened it on the South Mall, where we all, like traditionally, sure, all any of our mothers ever wanted was for us to have a job on the Mall, because that's obviously was all the bankers and solicitors and all the people with real normal jobs. So secretly, like, the only thing I ever knew about Republic of Work was I wanted the address to have a South Mall address, because I kind of want, not quite rub it in the faces, but I wanted people to treat the business. People use the term startup as if it was like, I don't know what they think it is, but I mean, it's a business.
Yeah.
And sometimes people can be very disrespectful of startups' time, pitch competitions, like perform, dance for me, monkey. And you're like, here's usually young people who are trying to like start a business and run a business. So I kind of wanted to hopefully bring a bit of respect back for people. It was an amazing run. Like I was CEO right up until COVID. Obviously COVID was a tough time. Easiest thing at the time was like I stepped away, first of all, from the day-to-day running of it. Frank Brennan, who was kind of the GM at the time, Mr. Frank does an amazing job running it. I went to the UK and became COO of the largest private COVID testing company in the UK. So I was the only one who was sad when COVID left, because like we were making millions every day. And when I came back, to be honest with you, it was just like I didn't want to go back into the CEO role. Like I had other things that I kind of wanted to do. Frank does an amazing job running it and all that. So, originally I was going to stay in the background and all that sort of stuff. But over time, things kind of changed, priorities changed. So I kind of stepped away from it fully. He said, still spending 2 days a week in there, like now as a tenant rather than an owner or an investor,
That's a good sign that you're back there as a tenant, in fairness. Yeah. So following Republic of Work, then what did you decide you wanted to do after that?
Yeah, so actually what happened was I came back, right? And if you think about it, every good startup starts with like identifying a problem and a market need. And the first thing they always say is you come up with your first solution, your MVP. And I suppose when I came back from London in particular, now just to be clear, over COVID, I was weird. I was commuting to London, because I was working for a healthcare company, so I was allowed to get on planes.
Oh, you were flying back
I was
and forward
commuting.
from Cork to London.
I was doing 2 weeks in London, 2 weeks in Cork. I've seen Heathrow. I've been the only person in Heathrow. I've been the only person on Aer Lingus plane and stuff.
God, that must have been a really weird experience.
Oh, weird is the only word. Like, imagine like 28 days later on an aeroplane. It's you're pretty sure somebody is flying the plane and you catch the occasional glimpse of an air hostess, and that's your Aer Lingus experience. I guess when I came back, I'll be transparent, when I came back, I was like Republic of Work had done an awful lot of great stuff for the ecosystem, but it hadn't fulfilled what I wanted to happen, which was a kind of a massive leveling up of making it easy for people to start businesses. I have theories as to why that was and stuff, but I don't have a definitive answer. So it came back, and actually my thought was, okay, well, like, I worked, Republic of Work didn't solve the problem. I'll go, and what I worked out was actually it was going to take a lot. It was almost, I don't mean a political problem, but it was more about getting more collaboration between all the existing entities in Cork. And actually, as part of that, I engaged with City Council and the universities and all that. And weirdly, as part of that, I engaged a lot with the guys in Dogpatch in Dublin. And what I actually kind of worked out was that if I wanted to accelerate what was going on in Cork in the startup ecosystem, you kind of need to start at a national level. So I took this role in Dogpatch as group CMO, because basically it let me do an awful lot of kind of government engagement. It gave me a perspective where I got to work very closely with all of the big hubs in Ireland, so not just Republic of Work, but Dogpatch in Dublin, Ormo Bats in Belfast, Portishead in Galway, and RDI in Kerry, them being the kind of the 5 or 6 biggest hubs in the country. So like I spent the last 2 years really getting a really strong picture of, I guess, not only what was going on nationally in Ireland, but actually the different layers behind it, the university layer, the government layer, the commercial layer, how all the big multinationals like Salesforce and HubSpot and Microsoft and all these different people who partner with Dogpatch, where they fit into the equation. I got to see a lot of European engagement. I got to see a lot of what was going on. Like a couple of years ago, we took the entire Dogpatch team, which at the time was 34 people. Like Dogpatch now has probably close to 60 or 70 full-time employees itself. We took the whole team to Station F in Paris, which is the biggest startup hub in the world, a £250 million privately run startup hub in an old train station in the middle of Paris. It is
That sounds unreal.
magic.
Yeah.
So all that kind of led to, it all, like, as I said, it gave me, like, it was I've loved the last 2 years, and I'd be still there, except, strangely enough, Barry Downs is a Waterford man, very successful entrepreneur, built and sold a great company down in Waterford called Feed Henry, and in 2017 set up a venture capital firm called Sure Valley Ventures. And at the time, the idea was to bring more investment to Waterford. It's kind of gotten completely out of control now, and now it's not a Waterford venture capital firm. It's an Irish and UK one. So unlike a lot of the Irish VCs, we're very unique in that we have a fund for investing in companies in Ireland, but then we have a much larger fund for investing in the UK. So what's actually amazing about that is on a daily basis, like, I'm doing calls with Irish startups, I'm doing calls with UK startups. So again, like, you get this amazing point of comparison where, like, how are they doing in the UK for startups? How are they doing in Ireland for startups? So towards the end of last year, I started working for them on a kind of a part-time basis, while still in Dogpatch. Then at Christmas, finished up in Dogpatch, and since the start of the year, basically, I've been 5 days a week with Sure Valley. So it's been amazing.
So your role now basically is to find
poacher turned gamekeeper. so as somebody said to me recently, it's like, where's your loyalty really at? Like, is it with the startups or with the investors? I guess, look, for like my day-to-day role is I'm a venture partner with Sure Valley Ventures. So for people who don't quite know what venture capital is venture capital is a very particular type of investment. So what we do is we go out and we find high net worth individuals, family offices, successful entrepreneurs, some government money, and we put it all in a big pile. And then basically our job is to take that big pile of money, invest it in companies, and usually kind of over an 8 to 10 year frame, you're basically turning around saying, okay, guys, you give us money. So in the case of UK, we've an 85 million UK fund. In Ireland, we have a 30 million fund that'll probably go to a 50 million fund. Brilliant. So we're kind of saying, like, in 10 years' time, guys, we'll give you back that 50 million, but we'll probably hopefully give you back 3x that or 5x that. So our job is kind of, one, look after our investors' money, and two, essentially go out there and find startups that meet our investment thesis. And in the case of Sure Valley, we only invest in three things, which is we don't follow the hype machine. We've only ever invested in three things, which is we've only ever invested in AI, immersive, and cybersecurity. So ironically, over the last couple of years, we've done very, very well in cybersecurity. We've invested in great Cork companies, even like Smart Tech and Get Visibility up in the hill. We've invested in quite a few immersive companies, so we're all delighted with Apple's Vision Pro now and all that stuff, because it's kind of, we feel like we're on the cusp of something. And like when it comes to AI, every other VC around is jumping on a kind of a bandwagon, whereas we invested in our first AI company in 2017. We sold our first AI company in 2018. So like within those categories, like there's a lot of opportunity out there, and
a lot of scope.
A lot of scope. So they're the kind of companies that we're backing, and we would invest anything really. Like our UK fund invests anything from kind of 700,000 to 1.5 million. The Irish fund we're kind of very flexible on. Like we could kind of go as low as 250, kind of go as high as $1 million plus type stuff, depending on what people are looking for.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're obviously at the moment you're talking to a lot of different companies.
Yeah.
What kind of trends are you seeing in those three particular spaces at the moment that you feel are going to have a big impact on society?
Yeah, AI is mad. Like AI. It's funny actually, because I think in AI, what I'm seeing, and it genuinely, I was only saying it to somebody this morning, it's fascinating when you have a job like mine that sits in two different jurisdictions, because you're kind of every day you're following, like every day I'm reading the Financial Times and every day I'm reading the Irish Examiner. Do you know what I mean? And like the difference you see is like in Ireland, there's a lot of I won't say fear, but people are talking a lot about the negative side of AI. Like they're talking a lot about it's going to cost jobs, and my attitude is it's only going to cost jobs if the human being who is like implementing the AI decides I'm going to replace the jobs with AI. Like AI itself is not going to like cause the jobs to go away, you know, unless Skynet shows up.
And then we're all in trouble.
But like what you're forgetting is like AI will, you know, inevitably AI will cure cancer. Like AI is going to be as transformative as the internet was, or as as when mobile, like when we went from desktop to mobile, or when we went from service to cloud. Like AI isn't kind of the small little thing, like, because I mean essentially what it's done, you know, over the last 5 years, every business in the world has been like collecting data. I mean, those of us working in marketing, like, you know, think about the amount of postal addresses we've collected because, like, well, we just got them to fill in that form and collected. We never ever like design marketing campaigns around postal addresses anymore. Whereas suddenly, like when you can feed a huge amount of data into an AI, like there's endless opportunities there, and it will have to be regulated and it'll have to be well thought out. But the opportunities in marketing are insane. Like the opportunities around personalization and things like that are absolutely insane in it. Like, so I'm like, what I will say is, there are different types of AI. So, you know, the kind of hypey one in public is generative AI and all that. We haven't invested that much in generative AI because it's hard to judge. It's hard to judge the commercial value in generative AI. Like it's hard to place a bet today and know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. Where we've invested a lot in is, as we call it, the picks and shovels layer, the infrastructure layer, the kind of, in particular in kind of narrow verticals. Like I've seen, you know, some very cool, like we're using AI to do this very cool thing in marketing, or we're using AI to do this very cool thing in manufacturing.
So not the broad stuff, the really
not the because the challenge with the broad stuff too is like if the market is huge, it's probably going to end up getting serviced by Microsoft and all those guys. Yeah. Whereas actually, when you go into these narrow niches, you know, again, like things like the data sets that startups can collect and stuff are probably valuable. So we're seeing a lot of like, there's a lot of cool. I'll talk to you off camera about a lot of the cool marketing stuff I've seen. I mean, I could talk to you all day about immersive because, like, I was one of those nerd kids who ran around thinking 5 years' time now and the Lawnmower Man will be real. You know, virtual. I've loved virtual reality from day one, and I think it's been a thing over the last 15 years almost where start stop. Like fundamentally, one of the things that I think we'll all look back at is essentially kind of Apple redefining immersive as spatial computing, which is their term.
I was going to say for me that's the marketing as opposed to
it is, but it is because you see what the thing about immersive and virtual reality and all those terms is that what it made everybody think about is just like, oh, I'm looking out at something, all right. Whereas the difference, so therefore. It all felt like that it was just about graphics, you know what I mean? It was just about visuals. Whereas actually, like the majority of value that you get from immersive technologies is not just what you're seeing, but it's contextual. And like the idea behind spatial computing is that like the Apple Vision Pro and it knows exactly where you are, like position-wise. So for instance, I don't know if people have caught this, but when you see video on like, the Apple Vision Pro is not transparent.
No.
Like when you're looking in any of this footage and you're seeing, oh, putting the screens here and it's like, that's a created image you're looking at. And like, you know, already some of the utility you're seeing is, you know, I mean, you're seeing like we're a couple of weeks in, all right? Most of it is still novelty stuff. But even basic stuff like the fact that, you know, you can stand in your kitchen, open your notes app with your shopping list, pin it to your fridge, and then you walk away and you go into the office and you put your monitor up on your screen and then you come back into the kitchen and like it's pinned to your fridge still. Like you could literally pin. So that sort of spatial computing versus, you know, we went through this thing of like virtual reality and then augmented reality, a layer on. I think the spatial computing thing now is where things is going to get super interesting. Everything, it's going to take a bunch of time. It's going to take, it's expensive now. It's going to have to come down and all that. But I do think we all know one thing about Apple, like whatever you think about them, whether you're an Apple head or an Android head or whatever like that, you know, they are one of the biggest companies, literally one of the biggest companies in the world. So they do set trends and they do run trends. And therefore, even if all Apple do is kind of pull the industry in a particular direction, it feels like the time is going to be now for that sort of stuff.
It does. And look, Facebook have certainly, or Meta have tried to, with Quest and with Oculus, obviously done a lot in that space. And they've probably invested a hell of a lot more as well, potentially.
Oh, they have, and actually, like I hope everybody's aware that it's all been done in Cork, like, because Reality Labs is based here. Not only is Reality Labs based here in Cork, in the old Capitol Cinema building, but the reason it's based there is because they bought a Cork company, and that Cork company was a spin out of Tyndall. And like the Tyndall Research Institute at UCC is one of the top microelectronics research labs in the world. So like they specialize there in the sort of photonic technologies that are in all these headsets. So like it's kind of weirdly strange that, like, you know,
it's coming back to Cork.
But if you think about it, we have this city where you have them, you know, you have Meta down there.
Apple
is the largest employer in the city. And then, as I said, for us in Sure Valley, we've got the trifecta because, you know, we also have 8 of the top 10 cybersecurity companies in the world European headquarters here. So like I guess it was kind of naturally at some point that Sure Valley would open a Cork office, and it just worked. Good timing for me, you know.
It's a great sign for the city that companies like that are opening offices here, like, and that they are investing in Irish technology, immersive.
They are. I mean, I suppose. Look, I spent a lot of the last couple of years, as I said, in Dogpatch, interacting with the big FDI companies in particular, and I learned an awful lot about how they operate and stuff. And you know, it really frustrates me when people talk about, oh, they're here for the tax, all right? When you're making the sorts of money these companies are, it's like, oh, we got to pay a few extra billion. Like it's, I mean, fundamentally too, you have to remember, like, think of, like, if you take somebody like Meta as an example, like, whether you know anything about Mark Zuckerberg or not, like, he doesn't strike you as tight. Like, he doesn't strike you as a guy who wakes up in the morning and what he's worried about is like how much tax he paid. Like, it's not. I mean, where Irish business will have changed forever, right? Regardless of the tax outcome is that before the FDI companies came to Ireland, like, we didn't have product managers. Like, I mean, even Google alone, like, we didn't have digital ads specialists and all this sort of stuff. Like, by the very nature of them setting up in Ireland, like, they've changed the makeup of the jobs pool and the talent pool. They've forced universities to innovate. I mean, you know, MTU and UCC, probably of all the Irish universities, are the best examples where they have been so receptive in terms of industry, you know, developing courses, like both developing courses around cybersecurity, UCC opening up a financial services center of excellence, you know, MTU opening up a funds academy. Like, they have, over the last 10 years, reacted so much to the big companies who've moved into Cork. You know, you've, in financial services, Bank of New York, BNY Mellon, all these companies that have opened in, like, Cork Airport Business Park. And the universities have kind of pivoted and gone, okay, well, we need to provide now the skill sets for these places. Like, so it's, like, it has been fascinating to watch, like, how this whole technology layer has kind of descended on Cork, if you know what I mean. In a relatively short period of time, acknowledging that, you know, Apple is in Cork 40 years, like 2 years after Apple started, it's set up in Cork. And I think it's only when you spend time away from Cork, we all kind of, like, when we're here, you forget Apple exists, and you forget things like the only Apple-owned manufacturing plant in the world is in Hollyhill. You know, like, Apple stores run out of, like, the amount of stuff that people, I think, we just think, oh, Apple just have an office here, and they don't realize, like, Apple Global Logistics, every Apple store in the world, the Apple Watch, like all these things are headquartered in Cork. I remember a guy I know who worked there for many years. He said to me, he said, it's very simple. He says, like, if there's a new iPhone coming out in September and there's a problem with the iPhone, the guys in Cupertino designed it and caused the problem. And it's some guy from Cork who's going to be sent to China to go fix it, So we should be proud of that. Like,
we absolutely should. Yeah. And overall as a city, I mean, there's so much going for Cork at the moment. Now, I suppose Ireland as a whole, only English-speaking country in the EU. You look at the talent pool in Ireland, and this is something I suppose I'd like to discuss with you as well, because you've got your ear to the ground in that space in your role now. The amount of talent, the amount of companies starting up in Ireland. I think there was a study wasn't there done after COVID. The amount of companies that started up after COVID here that was absolutely insane. So it's going to be really exciting now as that plays out over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years. What emerges from that basically injection of people.
Oh, the great reset. You know what I mean? That one time in life where we had to, as somebody said to me, you couldn't escape your own thoughts, like, because there was nothing else going on. You know what I mean? And it's a really exciting time. And like the last 2 years I spent in Dogpatch. Dogpatch runs National Startup Accelerator, NDRC, runs the National Angel Investment Network. So it's very close in terms of, I guess, put several hundred companies through it every year in terms of things. And part of that National Startup Accelerator runs through Republic of Work here as a kind of a regional partner and stuff. So like it's never like it's always been Ireland's always been a great place to start a business, right? We can give out about everything, but it has, and I can speak to it from the perspective of like now in particular where I'm contrasting, startups in the UK and startups in Ireland. Like, if you look at organizations like Enterprise Ireland and the local enterprise offices, like there's no UK equivalent. Like if you're getting started, there's no there is no UK equivalent. Like if you're starting a business in the UK, off you go.
Yeah.
If you're starting a business, there's some places have the equivalent of the Leo network, but not many. But there's no Enterprise Ireland. Like there's nobody going to just turn around and write you a check because you're Irish and because they think you have a good idea.
Yeah.
And in one sense, I think that's like actually there is this. I don't know if safety net is that, but there's I think somebody starting a company in Ireland has a step up straight away. The one thing I will say that I do notice a little bit is that sometimes there's pros and cons in that, right? Because the one thing you find is with a lot of the UK startups and the American startups in particular, because there's no handout, there's a hunger and there's a drive and there's an immediacy, because it's kind of like we're starting our business today, and like if we don't have a customer in 3 months' time, like we're out of business.
Actual generating revenue becomes more important.
Like money is a really important thing. So there's a kind of a hunger and a drive, and we have that in spades in Ireland. But there is this danger sometimes where I kind of sometimes think, you do find people who think that startups is kind of like it'd be cruel to say a gap year project, but there are definitely people who miss the part where what you're actually, you can use whatever terms you like, but you're starting a business, and the fundamental principle in business is more money comes in the door than goes out the door. And like with technology companies in particular, there's a kind of like the reason venture capital exists, the reason any sort of investment exists, is because like if you're developing a product in technology or in pharmaceuticals or anything like that, you have to put a lot more money into the development of the product before you ever have anything you can sell. Whereas like, if you're starting maybe a more traditional business, we always hear the great one, the drop shipping businesses, where you get the money in before you have to pay anything out. We'll kind of skip over how unrealistic that is. But the point is that, it's still a business. And like what you do find sometimes is like, I think back to the days when Pat, myself, John Pivo, a few others, when we got Chris Kennedy, when we started in Trustive, like we started, I remember in August, we were kind of live in January. By that September, we'd raised 3.2 million in venture capital. Laughingly at the time, it was the largest seed round in European history. It'd be a good weekend now these days. Like, and built the business, grew the business, and like a couple of years later, the company was sold for 43 or 49 million or something like that. And like there are days where I meet companies in Ireland and the UK, and it's kind of like, oh well, we did this program in our university, and then we did this and this, and you're kind of going like, you're kind of 3 years in, you've kind of you might have built something, but you've sold nothing. So therefore, because you haven't sold anything, you don't know whether what you've built is any good. So definitely would like to see a bit more urgency, like a bit more people conscious of. I think the challenge is when you we're very the Irish government is very generous in terms of grants and all that, which is you can't complain about that. But I think there are times then where, that there's a little bit too much padding, and as a consequence, people don't understand. I mean, traditional business understands it every day. Restaurant owners in Cork understand it every day of the week, that if you don't have more money coming in than going out, it's a thing. I always remember growing up, there's a reason why the only day of the year that publicans paint their pubs was Good Friday, because the pubs were closed. You couldn't close the pub any other day of the year to paint it, because you desperately needed the money coming in. So I think that's one thing that I think we'll see it anyway, because there's been a huge adjustment globally with regards to startups in the last kind of 12 months. There was this kind of 10-year boom cycle in terms
interest rates. I
mean, it was interesting. Well, actually, I know what you saw in the States too. I always remember here in Ireland, it was always talk about grass is always greener. They used to give out about investors here in Ireland, and it was like, oh well, if we went to America, we could get. And the answer most people was like, off you go. So but the difference was that in America, it was all about growth. Like so long as you're growing, somebody was willing to give you money. And the challenge was when the stock market kind of collapsed in America, that attitude went away. And now it's infinitely easier, to be perfectly honest with you, to raise money in Europe or even in Ireland than in the US. Because in the US now, all the big pension funds and stuff that finance, say, the venture capital industry over there, they've all been wiped out by the stock exchange. And they are hammering down the doors of their investors going, when are all these companies you're putting money into going to be profitable? So suddenly now the number one metric is how quick can you be profitable? And in Ireland and the UK and in Europe, that was always the thing. Businesses were always being judged on their fundamentals and not just how fast are you growing. So I think that kind of almost gives us a little bit of, there's a home turf advantage now to that. Brilliant. Where, startups were they were odd that they weren't getting the valuations and stuff. But now in the great leveling out, I guess in Ireland we've had to level out a lot less than anywhere else, because we never had the crazy valuations. We never had the sort of crazy money going into companies that you had elsewhere,
And that's the thing, especially in 21 and 22. I mean, just the environment that was created, there was so much malinvestment.
Oh, there was so much money. And I mean, in Ireland, where people forget, what I also say about it, the environment, the venture environment in Ireland, we're very lucky. We've got a nice variation in funds. There's, you've got people like Sure Valley, you've got Elkstone, you've got Act, you've got Delta, Atlantic Bridge, Kernel here in Cork as well. Great companies. And the nice thing about them is, a lot of them have, entrepreneurs and founders in them. So you've got this unusual thing where the majority of money in most of them is actually government money, so Enterprise Ireland money. So there isn't cutthroat, ruthless competition. Which means it's I've never seen an industry better described as the whole co-opetition. We will be fighting with deals on good startups like anybody else. But actually we also on pretty much every day you're talking to some other VC about a deal where you're going to co-invest or something like that. So there is an element where sometimes you get startups, I won't given out is the wrong word, but they're negative about opportunities in Ireland or valuations and stuff like that. But sometimes that's because, and I say it as a kind of 4-time founder, sometimes founders and entrepreneurs, we're absolutely terrible at judging value, our own value, So you do get a lot of you do get an awful lot of companies in Ireland who are very young. And I say that not I don't mean age wise. I don't mean age of founder wise. I mean age of company wise. Get a lot of companies where, all they have is an idea. They don't have any market validation. They haven't spent a lot of time talking to customers, and they're totally confused why nobody wants to give them £1 million at a 5 million quid valuation or 10 million quid valuation. I spoke to a company there recently, and they were trying to raise 3 million at a 20 million quid valuation at, and like they had in 5 years, they'd done, like, first of all, they had been together 5 years. They'd done like 100 grand in revenue across the entire 5 years or something, and like they were odd then that like, oh, we're not getting any responses from venture capital in Ireland. And I'm like, really? Really? You're surprised?
So. Talk about people in this. I always identify key moments, and most business people and entrepreneurs, there's like this series of key moments through their career. One that kind of jumped out with me there earlier on was when you mentioned you got in a flight and you sat down beside Pat Phelan.
Yeah.
How do you feel your career would have changed if you hadn't taken that flight?
Oh God. See, I don't want to give him too much credit.
Yeah,
he'll watch this. No, but I mean, what I will say is, God, I think I'd be very rich right now. No, but I'd be poor in spirit. No, because I mean, I know exactly what would have happened. Like I would have probably gotten a job in an FDI multinational, and I would have done great. And I might not have stayed at Twitter. I might have gone on to another. I might have gone to Google and stuff like that. So I'd have probably had a very successful kind of corporate career. The one thing that I do know, the biggest, it was so funny. It's such a fucking typical Cork thing. The one thing at the time was the biggest concern I had was there was almost no chance that I was going to be able to do that job from Cork. So there was the whole thing of like, I want to have to move to Dublin. And I don't know if I'd have actually survived Dublin. So I'd probably have ended up coming back and working in Apple or somewhere in Cork. But I do mean that because the reason I remember the logic in my head of going to join Trustif was, I'm not going to make a lot of money here at this, if this doesn't work, I'm not going to make a lot of money here. But actually, like it felt like a massive education in terms of like the travel I got to do, a completely different style of marketing at the time, because you were kind of a one-man marketing team, and you were doing everything right, from writing press releases to actually corporate to selling product as well. So you were like, when you're doing marketing in a startup, it's a combination of everything. Like you're doing PR, you're doing event management, you're doing everything.
You're responsible for everything.
You're everything. Yeah. Like there's no specialisms. The same like when I joined, I was the first non-developer in the door in teamwork, and they probably only let me in because I had a computer science degree. And like, you have to do a bit of everything, and then over time you work out what's needed, and you start skilling up, and you start bringing in people, and you start building out teams and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So like I was always a technology guy, I grew up fixing computers and all that stuff. But I think it was that interaction in Trustif made me realize like I wanted to work in and with technology companies. Like before that, it was weird actually. I had been doing things like working in and around like consulting for hospitality like I'd gone from events into kind of hotels and hospitality, and there was always this underlying tech layer to everything. But that was the moment where I realized, yeah, like tech people are crazy, and I really want to hang out and work with them for the rest of my life. Like,
it's more that's the environment you want to be in.
Yeah. They're what they always say. Like, I realized then, like, tech people were my tribe. Like,
yeah,
they're mad, they're crazy, but like it's like all that famous Steve Jobs quote. Like they are the people who are crazy are the ones who will change the world. Yeah. Because if you're a sensible, level-headed person, 90% of technology like will just scare the bejesus out of you. And it's like we have John Frizzell, our CTO in Sure Valley Ventures, probably the most knowledgeable guy in Europe right now when it comes to AI. And like, you know, the sort of stuff John is working on now at the moment is multi-agent architecture, right? So this is where you have AIs kind of training and teaching other AIs and working with AIs things. And like when I listen to that, I'm like, that's how Skynet gets built. Like when you're letting an AI kind of like manage another AI, you know? But the whole purpose then is like, well, John is talking about, well, here's the technology that's going to put the box around those guys and control them and stuff like that, you know? And that's the sort of like that's how technology works forward. And I think the one thing I like about where technology has gone in Europe in particular, like in America, part of the reason it innovates is like it is the frontier.
It's Wild West.
It's completely Wild West. Like things like in my youth, I'm like all over that, like. But like, you know what? People get shot in the Wild West, like, you know. Whereas like
the rules control the
they
fun.
lose control too, like, you know, it looks great, like, but you burn, you know, they burn down villages and all this sort of stuff. Whereas actually, I think, you know, like, sure, anybody in marketing, you know, those 4 little letters, GDPR, you know, we thought that would be the end of us, you know. Last week when the recycling tax came out on bottles, we thought that would be the end of mankind as we know it. I like how technology is treated in Europe. I think we put. Sometimes we're too heavy-handed in terms of safety and stuff. But I look at things like the new AI Act and stuff like that. In Ireland, it sounds really weird, but I think the Irish government in particular have done a really good job in terms of setting up the kind of future success here. Like I sit on a government board called the Enterprise Digital Advisory Forum, where essentially we teach civil servants about technology. That's basically the job. Like they can ask us dumb questions, you know, not in the public arena, and we'll go, this is why Leo Varadkar doesn't need an Apple Vision Pro type stuff. But you know, part of the interactions there over the last it's nearly gone on 2 and 3 years now, was our advice that like we need a dedicated body around AI. And we've gotten that now. We've gotten a dedicated AI council here in Ireland with literally some of the top leading experts in Europe, including like locally here, Ronan Murphy from Get Visibility, he sits on it. And their job is like advise the Irish government on, you know, how they can ensure that AI is used well within things like the public service and all that sort of stuff. So that should be very cool. Like,
yeah, it's extraordinarily difficult though. It's finding that balance between the right amount of legislation to keep it safe, but also not to stifle innovation. Not to
stifle it, yeah.
It's
I think
tough.
it'll you know, it might err a bit too much on one side one way. But I think for the whole part, I do think in this case, my suspicion, we're incredibly lucky, I'll be honest with you. When it comes to AI, we genuinely do have some of the smartest thinkers in Europe, in Ireland, and actually even better, more locally in Cork. You know, you got business people like Ronan and people like that. They've an incredible crew out in UCC, you know, Professor Barry O'Sullivan and other people like that who are like European leaders in AI and stuff. You know, in the FDI's, Emerald DeLuite, down in Logitech, the global head of privacy for Logitech, and now she recently got promoted to the global head of AI governance for Logitech. And like, if you think about that, like in Cork alone, you know, FDI, universities, private, you know, Irish companies having, you know, the level of knowledge they have around AI, I'm kind of confident that Cork will become the AI. No, I better not make broad sweeping statements.
Clip that now.
Clip that, yeah. AI will finally bring independence to Cork. You know, it'll be that we'll get our People's Republic. You know,
brilliant. To finish up, man, I suppose at the moment you in your role, you know, you hold the purse strings to potentially invest in some hopefully some great companies.
Yeah.
Any advice to business owners and founders out there who are in the process of looking for funding?
Oh, I could, yeah. I'll give you the quick version, all right? Because actually, genuinely, one of the commitments I've given to the Irish startup ecosystem was, even though I was poacher turned gamekeeper, I'm determined to actually teach them how to fundraise properly, right? The great thing about fundraising is it's actually stupendously easy, right? Because, you know, you have different types of funds, different from angel investing to you know, venture capital, private equity, all sorts of stuff, right? And the problem is, frankly, you know, if you went today and you wanted to become a professional footballer or a professional rugby player, you'd research it. You'd know, okay, well, actually, normally, if you want to play for Man United or Man City, you know, academies, scouts, and all this sort of stuff. The challenge for a lot of business people when they want to raise money is they kind of just go to a bunch of people, put out their hand and say, "Can I have some money?" All right. And it's more complicated, more simple than that. Like as I said, you know, I've obviously since I joined full time, half of my address book at this stage probably reached out to it. Come on, DZ, give us a check, right? And I'm like, okay, but here's the thing: if you're not in one of the boxes that we cover, if I give you money, like I'm kind of misspending investor money and. I don't know, do I end up in jail? I'm not sure. I haven't asked yet. But I mean, so fundamentally, there are rules.
Yeah.
How much, what areas we can invest in, etc. And that goes for every single venture fund. So, like, you know what never works in raising money is mail merges, right? Oh, because it doesn't work. Yeah. Because every single firm will have different rules around what they are and aren't allowed to invest in, what stages they invest in, how their process works, how long it takes. So like, I would say like I remember Pat Phelan is probably one of the best fundraisers in the world, frankly. Why? Because he understands the process. He understands, like, he probably spends, you know, even across all the businesses he's involved in now, CSU, Limbo, all this stuff, he probably spends 30%. He probably definitely spends at least a day and a half a week on nothing but fundraising. Whereas I think a lot of founders think that it's kind of one and done, you know, you put a bit of time in once. If you end up if you're spending somebody else's money to grow your business instead of essentially bringing in money from customers, well, then part of your job is now going to be the management of that and keeping them and stuff. So I do think, like, fundraising is kind of a process, and you have to have a game plan. You have to do your research. You have to go and identify who are the prospects. Like, I suppose on a practicality level, like what I always kind of say, like, what are if you're going pitching an investor, one of the most fundamental things you have to do is, well, that investor may know nothing about your industry. So one of your first jobs is to educate them on, like, the opportunity, like what could this, like, what are you trying to build? What could this end up being from a success point of view? Because most investors won't know that. Like, if you're doing something cool, it's because you're passionate about it. You need to convince the investor that, like, there's a big outcome for them, you know?
There's a sales element to it.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, I always kind of say there's a couple of basic things. And, you know, every startup loves doing pitch decks, and most of them do them completely wrong. Because the first thing is, like, you have to find a problem worth solving. You'd be surprised the amount of startups who don't start with a problem. They start with a solution. They come up with an idea and they fall in love with the idea, but the idea doesn't solve any problem. Most investors want you to find a problem in the world. They want you to have an initial solution, but they don't want you to be too in love with it, because they want you to pivot your solution based on what customers tell you. So for me, it's like, is it an actual problem? Do you have first stab at a solution? Can you prove to me that the market is big enough that if you do crack the whole problem solution thing, there's going to be a big enough opportunity for everybody in it to make money? Do you have the team of people? Do you have either the team of people now, or do you know the team that you need in order to make it happen? And then can you give me some reason why I should believe everything else you've told me in the other four parts? And that can be because you have a background in it, or that can also, maybe you don't have a background in it, but that can also be almost like you have a well thought out series of milestones and plans ahead. And then after that, then the only other thing I would say is you also have to spend a lot of time thinking about how much money you actually want to raise. And I think that's where startups get it really, really wrong, because the answer is, like, how much can we get? Like, they think that the trick is get as much money as you can in one go. Whereas if you think about it on a practical level, you want the opposite. You want to take the least amount of money possible, because if you're successful, you can keep raising money and you'll get better valuations on later money. Whereas, investors always have to price in risk. So if you're just getting started, you're a very risky proposition, which means they'll want more for their money. If you kind of go, well, actually, we're only going to take what we need for the next 12, 18 months, that's also priced in. And then when you come back and say, well, actually, all that stuff we said we were going to get done in 18 months, we've actually gotten done in 10 months. That's seen as a very positive sign, and therefore they'll give you more money. Like I think,
Do you think a lot of them think more short term, basically?
Oh, I think a lot of them kind of think like fundraising is a pain in the hole. I want to, I just want to do it once, and it never works that way. Because the other thing that doesn't happen is, contrary to everything you read in the paper, when somebody says, "Oh, we've just raised," like when Teamwork went out a few years ago and raised 70 million. Guess what didn't happen? Like, a check for 70 million doesn't arrive. Like, every time you raise money, there's strings attached to it and milestones attached to it and all that sort of stuff. So therefore, it's kind of like, if you've raised all your money in one sum, it's been expensive money. Whereas you're going to be held to milestones there. You may as well be held to milestones and just have to go and raise again. Because if your business is growing, you will always find people willing to back you.
There's a lot of good tips, I think, for people in there. So
yeah,
brilliant, man.
And more importantly, the most important lesson I learned is venture capitalists do not, in fact, use checkbooks. So do not come up to them at events and just say, "Could I have a check?" Because, no, I have checked. There is no Sure Valley checkbook.
If people are looking to find you, man, where's the best place to reach out to you?
I walk the streets. So it's actually
Pat Street, 11 o'clock at night.
Honestly, easiest in the world. me@dc.ie is my personal email. dc@svv.ai. So SVV, obviously, SureValleyVentures.ai. Or actually, because I'm just me, vc@dc.ie is also there.
That's got a nice rhythm to it. Fantastic.
Why not? The market, I may now be a ruthless venture capitalist, but the marketeer will never die.
And on that note, thank you very much.
Thanks a million, Mark.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Business and Marketing Scoop. I really, really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to click that subscribe button in Spotify, in Apple Podcasts, in wherever you listen to your podcasts. Each week, we have great people on talking about business, talking about marketing, giving amazing value and amazing insights. So please make sure you are